She defied the evil fairies to save a human girl. Her brothers captured a human, but one fairy chose to fight back. Introduction. All about fairies. Fairies are nature spirits. They are tiny creatures that live in fairy communities within the confines of a forest. Fairy communities have hierarchies, rules, and consequences for behavior. Fairies have been depicted in various ancient cultures, often seen as protectors of nature and bringers of fortune or mischief. Many symbols are considered to be associated with fairies. Thornwood Forest. There was a forest beside the town. So old, so deep, and so full of whispered terror that mothers spoke its name only after dark. Thornwood. The villagers said the trees listened, lights moved where no hands carried them, laughter drifted through the branches on moonless nights, and anyone foolish enough to follow it might never return the same. It said the forest belonged to fairies. Not the harmless kind from painted nursery books. Not gentle little creatures with flower crowns and cheerful songs. No, these were the old fairies. Chapter 1. The Forest and the Fairy. Leora was young by fairy reckoning, though to human eyes she would have looked no older than 19. She was striking in the way moonlight is striking when it falls across still water. Not merely pretty, not merely graceful, she seemed made of the forest's most delicate secrets. Her hair shone like chestnut bark after rain. Her eyes were the deep green of moss in shadow, and her wings, fine as glass and edged in gold, caught the light with every movement, as if dawn itself had brushed against them and never entirely left. Pause. But what made Leora different was not her beauty. It was her heart. She loved Thornwood not as something to possess, but as something alive. She loved the fox dens beneath tangled roots, the silver streams that hid beneath curtains of fern, the hush of snowfall on the cedar boughs in winter, the smell of rain lifting from black earth in spring, the little blue flowers that opened only at twilight, as if they trusted darkness more than day. To Leora, the forest was not a kingdom to rule. It was a song, and she wanted it sung in peace. Pause. But peace did not thrive easily in her family. Leora had two older brothers, Riven and Kale. Both were powerful, both were admired, and both were feared. Riven was charming in the most dangerous way. He smiled as if every cruel thought were only a joke he had not yet spoken aloud. He loved confusion, humiliation, and the slow unfolding of someone else's fear. Kale was different, quieter, harder. His anger was not playful like Riven's. It was cold and direct, like a storm gathering over stone. Together, they prowled the outer reaches of Thornwood and made sport of the humans who lived nearby. They misled travelers. They stole tokens from children. They twisted forest paths so woodcutters wandered in circles until dawn. Sometimes they appeared at the edge of a clearing just long enough to leave a witness trembling for years. And every time the stories spread, every time the village fear deepened, Leora felt the wound widen. Pause. One evening she confronted them in the elder grove, where moonlit branches arched above the fairy court. "You make the forest into a nightmare," she said. Riven reclined against a root polished smooth by age and smirked at her. "A nightmare is only a lesson remembered. It is cruelty. It is caution," Kale said. Leora turned to him. "No, it is power used without mercy." Riven laughed softly. "Humans fear what they cannot control. Why should we care?" "Because fear spreads," Leora replied. "It poisons everything it touches." Kale crossed his arms. "Humans cut forests, hunt animals, poison streams, and call it survival. Let them fear stepping where they do not belong. Some do harm," Leora said. "Not all." Riven's smile sharpened. "You always defend them. They are alive," Leora answered. "That matters." The two brothers exchanged a glance. Then they laughed, and Leora, standing beneath the ancient trees she loved, felt more alone than ever. Chapter 2. The Human Girl Who Entered Thornwood. In the village beyond the woods lived a girl named Mara. She was 16, dark-haired, bright-eyed, quick with her hands and even quicker with her thoughts. She was the daughter of the town apothecary, and unlike many in the village, Mara did not accept every story simply because it was old. She respected danger. She knew Thornwood was not safe. But she also knew fear had become a kind of inheritance among her people. passed from parent to child, fed year after year until no one even questioned it anymore. That troubled her. Pause. Then one autumn evening, fear became something else. It became a choice. A little girl named Elsie, Mara's younger cousin, went missing near dusk. At first everyone thought she had wandered to a neighbor's house. Then someone found her ribbon caught on a thorn branch near the forest edge. Panic spread quickly. Villagers gathered. Lanterns were lit. Voices trembled. But no one crossed into Thornwood. Not one. Morning will be safer, one man said. She may be hiding nearby, said another, though he did not sound convinced. Mara stared at them in disbelief. She's 7, she said. She's out there alone. Her mother gripped her arm. Do not go in. Then who will? No one answered. The silence told her everything. So Mara did what none of them would. She took a lantern, a knife from the kitchen, her father's old green cloak, and as daylight bled out behind her, she stepped into Thornwood. Pause. The air changed immediately. The forest felt deeper than it should have. Cooler, as if the world inside it followed older rules. Her lantern flame trembled. Roots twisted beneath her boots. The trees seemed too still one moment, too alive the next. Elsie, she called. Only the leaves answered. She searched by scraps of ribbon and tiny footprints pressed into mud. She crossed a stream on a half-rotten log, pushed through bramble, ducked beneath hanging moss, and at last, beneath a bent hazel tree, she found the child asleep in a nest of ferns, curled around the white rabbit she had chased. Relief nearly knocked Mara breathless. She wrapped Elsie in the green cloak and lifted her into her arms. Then laughter drifted through the trees. Low, beautiful, wrong. Mara froze. 2 figures stepped out from the darkness between the trunks. Fairies. Tall, elegant, unnatural in their perfection. Riven smiled first. Well, he said, a brave little mortal. Kale's gaze settled on the child in Mara's arms. And trespassing with purpose. Mara gripped her knife, though she knew how useless it was. Move, she said. Riven laughed. Did you hear that? She commands us. Please, Mara said, breathing hard. My cousin is just a child. And you? Kale asked. Mara swallowed. I'm taking her home. Riven circled her slowly. The lantern light caught in his eyes like silver fire. Humans tell dreadful stories about us, he said. I'm almost offended. You should be, Mara answered. For one instant, Riven looked genuinely delighted. Then Kale brushed a finger over the rabbit's ear. The creature vanished in a burst of silvery dust. Mara stumbled back with a gasp. Riven inhaled her fear as if savoring it. That one goes home, he said, nodding toward Elsie. The child is too small to interest us. Cold washed through Mara. What does that mean? Kale stepped closer. It means, he said, you will stay. Mara turned and ran. She made it only a few steps. Roots surged from the ground. Her lantern flew from her hand and shattered. Invisible force lifted Elsie gently from her arms and drifted the little girl away through the trees. Mara lunged after her, but thorns snapped around her wrists. No, Riven bent near enough for her to feel the cold of his magic. The child will wake at the edge of the forest, he said. She will remember nothing but a dream. Mara struggled, but the thorns only tightened. Kale's voice came like a closing door. We are keeping. And the forest swallowed her scream. Chapter 3. Leora learns the truth. Leora felt the spell from miles away. Not as sound, as damage. Magic moved through Thornwood the way sap moved through living wood. When enchantment was twisted for cruelty, the forest carried the sting of it. Leora was kneeling beside a moonlit pool when the shock ran through the water. The surface shivered under her fingers. Her heart sank at once. No, she whispered. She already knew whose magic it was. She flew through the trees, swift as a streak of gold between branches. At the North Grove she found signs of struggle. Trampled moss, a torn scrap of green cloak. Human footprints ending abruptly where roots had closed like a trap. Leora stared at the cloth in silence. Then she followed the trail of magic. Her brothers had hidden the human girl in an abandoned watch hollow, a place once used by fairies centuries long ago. Now it lay concealed behind ivy and glamour, deep enough that ordinary fairy patrols might miss it. Leora slipped to the entrance and looked inside. Blue fungal light glowed against damp stone. And there, in a cage woven from living branches, sat the human girl. Dirty, breathing hard, wrists bound in silvergrass, eyes bright with terror and fury. Riven lounged nearby, carving idle marks into a mushroom stalk with a bone blade. Kale stood watch at the cave mouth. She is not a pet, Kale said. If the elders learn of this, they will demand her release. Riven did not look up. Then they must not learn. They always learn, not if we move her before dawn. Kale glanced toward the cage. Why keep her at all? Riven's smile was lazy. Because she is rare. Mara glared at him. He smiled wider. She crossed into Thornwood for someone else, he continued. She did not beg. She did not collapse. She looked me in the eye and ordered me to move. Kale's expression darkened. You admire her. I dislike wasting unusual things. Mara spat at his boots. Riven laughed. Behind the wall of ivy, Leora closed her eyes. Anger rose in her like fire. Not hot and wild, cold and clean. She knew if she confronted him immediately, the human girl might become the first casualty of that fight. So she waited. She hated that she had to. But she waited. When the brothers finally stepped outside to reinforce the hidden wards, Leora slipped into the cave. Mara jolted upright at once. Leora raised a finger to her lips. For a few tense seconds, they only stared at one another. Then Mara whispered, "Are you with them?" "No." That's exactly what someone with them would say. Even in that moment, Leora nearly smiled. "My name is Leora," she whispered back. "They are my brothers." Mara's face hardened. "Then prove you're different. Untie me." Leora knelt beside the cage. The living branches recognized her touch and loosened. "I can open it," Leora said. "But if the wards wake, they'll return before we reach the river." "Then open it quietly." "I'm trying." Mara watched her for a beat. Then, more softly, "Why are you helping me?" Leora touched the silvergrass and let her magic flow through it. "Because it is wrong," she thought. Out loud she said only, "Because this should never have happened." The silvergrass recoiled and dropped from Mara's wrists. Hope flashed across the girl's face. And then, blue light flared around the cave entrance. The ward had triggered. Kale appeared first. Riven followed. Their silence was far more dangerous than shouting. "You," Riven said softly. Leora stood and moved in front of Mara. "She is leaving," Leora said. Kale's eyes hardened. "Stand aside." "No." Riven took a slow breath. "You would betray your own blood for a mortal. She is not a thing to own." Kale's power darkened the room like thunderclouds gathering indoors. "She entered our forest, and you crossed a line older than all of us," Leora said. Riven's expression sharpened. The cave trembled. The fight had begun. Chapter 4: Escape through the forest. Kale struck first. Thorn vines exploded from the cave wall toward Mara's ankles. Leora slashed her hand through the air, and a blade of green-gold light severed them before they could coil. Riven answered with illusion. In an instant the cave filled with copies of him, smiling, circling, whispering, shifting through the blue shadows. A lesser enemy might have panicked. Leora closed her eyes. She listened past the glamour, past the tricks, past the laughter. The real Riven carried something illusion could not hide. Intent. She spun and thrust her palm forward. Golden force burst across the cave and struck him in the chest, throwing him hard against a wall of roots. Crystal fungus shattered in a shower of sparks. "Run!" Leora shouted. Mara did. She dashed for the cave mouth as Kale slammed both hands into the ground. The stone cracked. Dark roots surged upward like living snakes. Leora leapt between them and spread her wings. Their magic collided in a flash that split a stone pillar down the middle. Kale was stronger. She knew that. But strength was not everything. Leora called to the forest itself. Roots in the walls shuddered, twisted, and obeyed her instead. Oak, cedar, ash, living wood surged together in a braided wall between Kale and the fleeing human girl. "Go!" she cried again. Mara burst out into the moonlit forest. Riven recovered almost at once. After her, the root barrier shattered beneath Kale's fury. Leora spun and fled, not away from Mara, toward her. She flew low through the trees, guiding the girl by flashes of gold. Behind them, her brothers gave chase with speed and fury enough to rattle the branches. The forest became chaos. Will-o-wisps flared in the distance, trying to lure Mara off the path. Brambles wreathed across the ground under Riven's command. Kale summoned wind sharp enough to bend saplings and throw leaves into blinding storms. But Thornwood knew Leora, and that night, the forest chose her. Foxfire lit the safe trail in pale green bursts. Fallen logs rolled into place over gullies just as Mara reached them. Owls burst from dark branches into Kale's face and bought precious seconds. Even the stream stones rose slightly beneath Mara's boots, steadying her footing as she ran. Why are they doing this? Mara gasped. Because they think fear gives them the right, Leora answered. They'll kill us. Not if I get you to the boundary. Mara stumbled, caught herself, kept going. Leora noticed that. She noticed, too, that Mara did not beg to be carried. She did not collapse. She ran. At the old stream crossing, Kale finally overtook them. He landed on the opposite bank in a storm of black leaves, wings spread wide, eyes blazing. It ends here, he said. Mara stopped short. Leora stepped in front of her. Then end it with me, she said. She goes free. Riven emerged behind them, sealing off retreat. He no longer smiled. You choose a strange hill to die on, sister. Leora held his gaze. No, I choose a line you will not cross. Riven laughed once, without warmth. You think humans will welcome you after this? You think the elders will praise you? You belong nowhere outside this forest. The words struck something old inside her, a fear she had never fully named. Not fairy enough for the court she lived in. Too fairy ever to belong among humans. Nowhere. For a moment the night seemed to hold still. Then Mara, breathless and shaking, spoke from behind her. She belongs to herself. Silence. All three fairies turned. Mara lifted her chin. You two talk as if everything is meant to be owned. The forest, people, fear, her. Maybe that's why you are weak. Riven's face darkened. Careful, mortal. You kidnapped a girl and put her in a cage, Mara said. If that is strength, I'm not impressed. Kale raised his hand. Leora moved instantly, but she did not attack. She did something bolder. She called judgment. She spread her wings wide and sent her voice through the roots, the river, the moss, the hidden chambers of Thornwood. Elders of the forest, she cried, come and witness what has been done in your name. The magic of her words rolled outward like thunder beneath the earth. Seed bells hidden in ancient branches began to ring. White moths burst upward in spirals. The stream lit silver from below. Riven stared at her in disbelief. You fool. No. Leora thought. Not fool. Finished with silence. And then the elders came. Blank. Blank. With judgment under moonlight. They emerged from tree trunks, mist, and moonbeams as if the forest itself had opened to let them pass. Ancient fairies. Some crowned in bark, some draped in ivy and frost, some with wings torn by centuries and mended by living thread. At their center stood Ira, eldest of the Thornwood court. She was tall and grave and terrible in the way mountains are terrible. Not because they rage, because they endure. Her gaze moved over the scene. The frightened human girl, the two princes of the fairy house, and Leora, standing between them. The stream seemed to hush. Even the wind went still. At last Ira spoke. Explain. Riven attempted calm. A human trespasser was detained for questioning. Mara made a small sound of disbelief. Leora stepped forward before he could spin the lie any further. They captured her after she entered the forest to rescue a child. They concealed her. They intended to keep her. The final words landed with force. A murmur moved through the elders. Among the fair folk, many laws could be bent. Some could be ignored, but one of the oldest forbade the unwilling taking of a human into permanent fairy possession. Not out of tenderness, out of memory. Once, long ago, such thefts had nearly brought war between realms. Ira turned to Mara. Is this true? Mara's throat moved as she swallowed. But when she answered, her voice held. Yes. Ira looked to Riven. Do you deny your sister's witness? No. Do you deny the mortal? Riven's jaw tightened. No. Ira turned to Kale. And you? Kale said nothing for a long moment. Then, no. A colder murmur passed through the gathered court. You have broken Thornwood's oldest boundary, Ira said. Kale took one step forward. And what then? Humans poison rivers, cut ancient groves, trap living things for trade, and we answer with rules. Fear keeps him out. Ira's eyes sharpened. You confuse terror with stewardship. They should fear us. And because of you, Leora said, her voice suddenly ringing clear in the silence, they fear the forest itself. All eyes turned toward her. She did not step back. They no longer know the difference between danger and cruelty, she said. They fear every branch, every sound, every shadow, because my brothers made fear into sport. Thornwood is not safer for it, only lonelier. No one interrupted. Ira studied her for a long time. Then she said, Leora, step forward. Leora obeyed. You summoned judgment knowing it would fall upon your own house. Yes, you stood against your brothers. Yes, you broke silence to uphold the law. Leora met her gaze, and because it was right, something changed in the air. Small, but undeniable. Ira raised her staff. Riven and Kale of Thornwood, by authority of the Elder Ring, you are stripped of free passage beyond the inner court for 7 seasons. Your glamour over the outer wood is revoked. Your dealings with mortals are forbidden. The watch of Root and Wing will follow you. Disobey, and exile will answer. Riven's face went white with fury. Kale's expression became a wall of stone. The sentence was more than punishment. It was humiliation. They had ruled by movement, secrecy, unpredictability. Now they would be watched, restricted, contained, and all because Leora had refused to stay silent. Pause. Then Ira turned to Mara. Mortal child, you were wronged beneath our boughs. That wrong cannot be erased, but it may be answered. Name one thing within our power, and Thornwood will grant it. The elders waited. Leora watched Mara carefully. Gold, perhaps. Protection. Healing herbs. Safe passage forever. But Mara surprised them all. She looked toward the dark line of trees and said, if humans enter the outer forest in true need, not to burn, not to hunt, not to harm, but in true need, do not punish them for old stories. A new murmur rippled through the fairy court. Ira inclined her head. Granted. Mara took a breath. And let me tell the truth when I go home. This time the silence was sharper. Fairies guarded secrecy fiercely, but after a long pause, Ira said, you may tell what happened. Whoever believes you will do so by their own courage. Mara nodded. At last Ira turned to Leora. You will escort her safely to the boundary. Riven let out a bitter laugh. So the heroine is rewarded. Ira did not look at him. She is entrusted, and in the language of that court, that meant far more. Chapter 6. The Walk to the Boundary. Dawn had begun to grey the sky by the time Leora and Mara walked toward the edge of the forest. After the violence of the night, Thornwood seemed almost painfully quiet. Birdsong stirred in distant branches. Mist drifted low above the roots. The stream they crossed now looked like any other stream in morning light, though both girls knew better. Mara walked slowly at first. Exhaustion clung to her. Red marks still ringed her wrists where the silvergrass had bound them. Leora noticed. Without a word, she reached out and touched one wrist lightly with 2 fingers. Warm gold light flickered. The bruising faded. Mara glanced at her. "Thank you." Leora nodded. "You were brave." Mara gave a tired breath of a laugh. "I was terrified." "Those are not opposites." That earned the faintest smile. They walked on. At last the edge of the forest appeared ahead, where roots gave way to grass and the first village fields lay quiet in the pale morning. Mara stopped there and turned back. She looked at Leora for a long time, perhaps trying to reconcile the stories she had been told with the person standing before her. "Will I see you again?" Mara asked. Leora considered the question carefully. Maybe. If the forest changed, if the village changed, if she herself changed enough to cross the distance between worlds. Maybe, she said at last. If the path holds. Mara nodded slowly. Then she did something simple and powerful. She held out her hand. No bargain, no spell, no fear, just a hand, human, warm, chosen freely. Leora looked at it for one heartbeat. Then she placed her own hand in Mara's. Fairy skin cool as stream water. Human skin warm as sunlight on bark. It lasted only a moment. But it felt larger than the forest around them. Not trust yet. Not fully. But the beginning of it. Mara withdrew her hand first. "Then I'll start with the village," she said. Leora's expression softened. "That sounds difficult." "It is." And for the first time since nightfall, they shared a real smile. Then Mara walked home, and Leora remained at the boundary, watching until the girl disappeared into the waking town. Blank. Blank. Chapter 7. When stories begin to change. At first, the village did not believe Mara. Not all at once. Some called it fear-born nonsense. Some believed she had been taken but not rescued by a fairy. Some urged her to keep quiet before the woods decided to reclaim her. But stories, once spoken, are hard to bury. Elsie remembered waking wrapped in a green cloak at the forest edge. Mara's mother noticed herbs growing safely where no one had dared gather before. A woodcutter lost in heavy fog returned swearing that pale golden lights had led him back to the road instead of deeper into danger. A child searching for his dog near dusk found the dog sitting calmly at the boundary beside a small pile of wild berries no human hand had placed there. So the fear did not vanish. But it changed. It loosened. People began to distinguish the forest from the cruelty that had hidden in it. Some still kept away. Others approached the boundary with caution and respect. No axes, no traps, no shouting challenges into the dark. Only quiet, offerings of milk, clean hands, and careful steps. The forest responded, not with welcome exactly, but not with punishment either. Pause. As for Leora, life in the fairy court changed too. The elders no longer saw her as merely a soft-hearted daughter who objected too often. Now they called upon her when matters touched the outer glades, when disputes rose near the border, when old wards needed tending in places where human fear had long soured the air. Some fairies mocked her still. They said she had a mortal heart. Leora took that as praise. Her brothers endured their sentence poorly. Riven hid his humiliation beneath wit sharp enough to draw blood. Kale retreated into near-total silence. But confinement forced him to witness something they had never expected. Thornwood did not weaken when fear lessened. It grew calmer, safer, stronger in quieter ways. Fewer fires appeared at the edge of the wood. Fewer hunters stumbled blindly into old traps. The outer groves were no longer constantly braced against intrusion and panic. Even the animals seemed to rest more easily. And though Riven and Kale would never admit it, their power had not protected the forest. Leora's courage had. Chapter 8. The Return. Months passed. Winter loosened. Spring returned. One evening in late spring, Leora stood in a clearing thick with bluebells, their petals swaying under the hush of dusk. Then she sensed someone at the edge of the glade. Mara stepped from the path carrying a satchel over one shoulder. "You came back," Leora said. Mara lifted the satchel. "My mother sent salve for the fox with the torn paw. Assuming your squirrel messengers were telling the truth." Leora blinked. They are not messengers. Mara raised an eyebrow. Leora paused. They are. Observant. Mara smiled. She had changed over the months. Not softened, strengthened. The village had begun listening to her, not because everyone agreed, but because she refused to be silenced by disbelief. She organized stream cleanups, argued against hunting too near the boundary, learned which plants the forest would allow humans to harvest and which must never be touched. Without calling herself one, she had become a bridge. Leora had come to think bridges were among the bravest things in the world. They sat together on a fallen log as twilight gathered around them. Do your brothers still hate me? Mara asked. Yes, Leora said. Good. I'd worry if they'd improved. Leora laughed, clear and bright as water over stone. After a while, Mara turned serious. Do you ever wish you'd left? She asked. The court, I mean. Thornwood. All of it. Leora looked up through the branches at the first waking stars. Sometimes, she admitted, but leaving would have been simpler, not better. The forest is mine in the way a promise is yours. Mara was quiet. Then she said, I think that's how I feel about the village. And there, under the bluebells and evening sky, they understood one another fully. Not because they were the same, but because each had chosen not to abandon what fear had damaged. Each had chosen to stay and change it. Thank you for listening to our story. You have just heard the first installment of a series of 8 stories involving fairies and Thornwood Forest. Additional installments of these stories will be available twice per month for your enjoyment. Please subscribe and hit the like button. You may hear leaves shifting like applause. And somewhere, just beyond sight, a fairy named Leora keeping watch.